So we are joined from Dallas, Texas, in the DFW Metroplex by Shannon Jenkins, UX designer, freelance graphic designer, you name it, anything user experience she's an expert in. We thank you so much for joining us today. I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School, and we're recording this for all of our computer science engineering students in Madison County schools, including my good friend Angela Jordan over there at Shirley Simmons, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
Thank you for bringing me on.
Now, just give us a little background because you are a user experience designer, which is one of, if not the hottest and most fast growing careers in tech right now. But you do not have a college degree in this discipline. So
No,
just give us a background on how you got into this because obviously, we're not telling people to not go to college, but if this is something they want to get into, they don't necessarily have to. So just tell us about your background and your path to tech.
well, great. Thank you for asking. First and foremost, going to college is important, but I am one person that can testify as to if you don't have the money, there are other ways to get it done. And getting into tech was really, it just highlighted that fact. Did not get a chance to finish college because of finances. Tried to make it work. Tried to do the job route in college. I was one of those kids who had to find another way. So dealing with the deck of cards that I was dealt, I started taking up different jobs, but on the side, I was expanding my creativity. So whether it came through photography or whether it came through just graphic design or the back end of editing photos, I was always heightening my sense of customer relations or just doing the creative work. When I started doing all of that, or I graduated high school, UX design wasn't necessarily a thing just yet. Not like, your parents tell you go be a banker or go work at some office in some cubicle. UX design was not a household title. And so I spent a good chunk of 10 years just trying to find where can I raise a family with my creativity? What title can I go under and really just come out on top? And it really was in the valley of my lows that I said, okay, I'm going to become a seeker. Instead of going and asking, questions of tell me, I'm going to go seek the answer. And I say the word seek because I went to places that I denounced. And what I mean by that is like, I felt at one point LinkedIn wasn't giving me what I wanted. I felt like I didn't really need it. I went to LinkedIn. I went to LinkedIn, and that's when I found the world of titles in tech. When I found UX design and I read the description, I was like, oh wow, this sounds like me. This sounds like where I want to be. I'm an introvert and I can be an introvert and be a UX. This is perfect. But it wasn't until I started seeking where I wanted to be to find those answers, to find the different levels of tech that there are. So that's how I kind of got into UX design. I really stumbled upon it.
Yeah, and I know we had another UX designer, but UX design really it stands for user experience.
Mm-hmm.
And never has that been greater needed in every field because we've talked about with some of our other guests. You even go in a church now, scan
Yeah.
our QR code to download our app. You go in a hospital, scan our QR code to download our app. You look on a commercial, go to our website to see more information. So all these are user experience type things. The
Yeah.
people that designed the interface for our GPS. So literally, this is a career that can not only be freelance, but can be work for some great employers that have to constantly update their software for user experience. Some of those ones I mentioned, there are literally UX designers that work in hospitals, and that's
Yeah.
all they do. So talk a little bit about some of the things that UX designers touch because like you said, it's a relatively new field but it is one of, the not fastest growing jobs in tech.
Yeah, so UX designers are pretty much everywhere. I actually have found a plethora of industries that UX design is in. First and foremost, user experience, like you said yourself, Greg, is, you have the QR codes and you have the different things that you can scan, but that information has to go somewhere. And for us to even know what that information is for, we have to do the research. And that's where the user part of user experience comes in. We do a ton of research to even start the design process. That's the first step of being a UX designer. And you go into the fields, you kind of figure out what the user needs. There's business needs, like if you have an Apple iPhone, they're the hottest, tech when it comes to mobility and everything like that. But in order to get the different updates that come out, we have to do the research. Okay, what are the users saying that they need right now? And sometimes you'll get features that you didn't necessarily ask for, but that's kind of like the two pillars of tech is you give them what they need, and then you push for progression in tech and see how that goes. Once you do the user research, you then go into the design process. And the beginning of the design process is wireframing, which is you're putting a skeletal kind of draft together of what you just found out. It's kind of like, and since we're talking to high school, it's kind of like when your mom takes you to buy shoes and you have to try on all these different shoes to see which one fit. You might run a little bit with one to see if you can run with it. You might, walk a little bit to see if your foot is stepping in the right place and if it serves you, the person buying it. That's what user experience is like. We're trying on the different shoes in a wireframing process. You go to the stakeholder, which is, let's just say the user or Apple. And you are saying, okay, well, this is why we think this will work. Let's run some more testing to see if this would work. Let's run, so to speak, like when you buy sneakers. Let's run with this design and see if this design actually works. If it comes back and it doesn't work, what do? You take the shoes off and you try on another pair. That's essentially what user experience is. Until you get the design right, get to your end goal, then you just keep iterating, which is trying on the shoes. You're iterating your try-ons, so to speak. But that's all we touch. And I actually have a few slides here that a lot of people don't understand how much UX design is actually where UX design actually touches on. So if we have time, I could share that.
Yeah, go ahead. I'd love to see this.
Okay, so as I get the slides up, I just want to kind of give a little preface to what I'm about to show. We think about med tech, ed tech. Med tech is the medical field, ed tech is education. All of the known names, but a lot of people don't actually know where, tech actually is. So I'm going to show you guys something here. So tech is pretty much everywhere. Can you see the screen?
I can, and that is a great way to start it because, yeah, I think finance and insurance are two of the hottest places where tech is being used right now.
Yes, and a lot of people would think about finance. You think about going into your mobile app and how easy and accessible your account is. A lot of kids may not know what that looks like, but if you know about insurance, if you're starting to drive a car, your parents have to get insurance. Well, the way that they're able to keep up with you is through design work of the app. Prop tech is property tech. A lot of the children now, or the teenagers, the teens going on to the adults, are thinking about entrepreneurship, right? One of the main things, especially on the East Coast, that a lot of people are looking into is becoming some kind of property owner or selling property. Prop tech is something, it's a field of its own. If you think about when you look at an apartment or you're able to step in a room and you have a 360 view of that room, that is where tech comes in. You also have wealth tech. That's like going to looking at stocks and bonds. That's different things under that umbrella, which is wealth tech. There's regulation technology, which is reg tech. I'm a UX designer. We can work closely with either developers or we can work with cybersecurity. And reg tech is where, you're dealing with data. When you're working in cybersecurity or you're working with that team, you also have to deal with regulation. When you're designing a screen and you see all the privacy pop-ups and do you want to allow the cookies? That's regulation of your data. So a lot of people don't think about UX design in those aspects either. There's legal tech. We already talked about ed tech. Food tech is on the rise. And you think about the last time you went somewhere really cool, whether you went on a cruise or you went somewhere else, food tech is where you go to McDonald's and they have a screen where you can put in your order, or just if you go to any, challenge you, go to your next fast food restaurant and see where they are putting tech screens. How are they using their tech? That is an umbrella under food tech. Clean tech, you're thinking about green tech or sustainability. If you go to the West Coast, which is California, and you go along their coastline, they have certain machines and different things and services in place to regulate their sustainability. We have biotech, that's more for the people that are in science. If you like to create, but you also like science, there's an umbrella for you as well in biotech. There's health tech, and there's mad tech, which is marketing and advertising. If you want to if you're into having a voice heard, or you feel like you can really push a product forward, look into mad tech, marketing and advertising. And then there's retail tech. You know, if you go shopping, you are able to also have those screens put on. So that is one of the important things that I just wanted to share.
Awesome. And something you mentioned on there with the retail tech, these kids are always shopping for clothes, and you know, and we've all said it. Look, I wanted to buy from them, but their website was hard to navigate. Little
Yes.
things like that. Companies will pay a lot of money to make sure they're not losing sales. Banks will pay a lot of money to make sure that people know how to navigate a website. Because people that are in finance, people that are in retail, that's not their area of expertise. They're going to find somebody where it is. Now, something I wanted to come back to is you talked about, you know, your personal situation wasn't ideal to go and get a 4-year degree. So, what are some certifications that some of these kids can look into if this is an area they want to get into?
Now, that's a really interesting place because we're in a time where tech is ever evolving, right? And when I started with my certification, AI wasn't necessarily on the table as a must have. The first thing that I looked at was user experience. And unlike being a developer where you have to go through all of the different platforms to learn, or being in cybersecurity where you have to go through all of the different regulation qualifications and security access, UX design in itself, user experience design, is an umbrella of generalists, you know. But as you get into learning UX design, which you would obtain that certificate as a whole, then you start to notice that there are subcategories. If you like to write, let's just say you go onto a website, and I will say Fashion Nova because that's that's hot with everyone. If you get text messages from Fashion Nova and you're like, that's a little out of pocket, that is called copy. If you get to know the word content and copy, they are used interchangeably in the world of tech, but they mean the same thing. You can be a copywriter or a content writer. And let's just say that's your strong point. You want to write for the company. You want to get to know how to talk to the users and get them to use the product and retain their presence. If you like to be a designer, there are different umbrellas that you can go under. You can be an all-around just designer. If you're with a bigger company like Google or Facebook or Meta, you can actually be just someone who designs, and that is your niche. That is what you are meant to do. You can either go into UI design, and I'm saying these terms because if you go look for a job or if you go get your certificate, these are what the terms are that they use. User experience, UI is user interface. So Greg, like you said, you go shopping, it's too much stuff on the website. I can think of a website myself where I just prefer to go in a store, and I do not like going in the store, but the website's horrible. You as a user interface designer is responsible for that. The architecture of the page is how the information is laid out. So you would be an IA designer, information architecture designer. So there's a lot of different ways. And honestly, going back to the question of certificate versus college, how does one become this, which is a certificate? is that all walks of life, whether you're a bartender, whether you become an entrepreneur and you go into it, there is some aspect of what you were interested in before that can coincide with the building or the architecture of a website or a screen.
Absolutely. And then also it goes back to those customer service skills because you got to listen to your market to see what
Yeah.
they need. Now, one thing I wanted to hit on was the if there's any coding involved because in our middle schools we spend a lot of time with coding and we're going to spend a little bit of time on it here. And I know there's more languages coming out. I know Python has gotten really big in the last few years. So,
Yeah.
what type of coding skills would be useful for a UX designer?
For UX design, I'm glad you asked that too, because in June, I will actually have my front end development certificate from
Oh,
Western
wow.
Governors University. So I say that to say upskill, upskill, upskill. And you could be a UX designer, but you need to be able to talk to the next team that you'll be handing your design to, which is the developers. The only thing that you really need to know how to listen to and think post design is HTML5 or CSS. Okay. Those, I could say the whole name, but that is really what you're going to see often. You're not going to see it spelled out. So just remember HTML5 and CSS. HTML is just kind of like the regular text of, it has the regular markdown, which is what the M stands for in HTML, markdown language. It's just regular markdown. But CSS in itself is what puts the color on the page to the developers. The reason that that is important to upskill and know those things about coding is because it makes it makes you kind of invincible a little bit to be able to have that skill, be able to talk to the other team. They're not going to want to put you to the side. They're going to put to the side the person that is a one-trick pony. But it's not saying that you have to go and learn it all unless you just truly want to. But it's a lot of information.
Yeah, and I don't think it's ever a bad thing to at least have a little bit of coding skills. Um, because let's say you're a UX designer, but if you can design a new app to help with the UX design, these companies that aren't tech companies need apps. They need apps developed. They need websites developed. So even like I agree, and they're going to spend a lot of time on HTML. We're going to go over it some, the CSS, and then even the new things coming out. It can never hurt to have those certifications. Now, before I get to their questions, I don't think it's any secret that it's Black History Month, and it's just a time to really celebrate accomplishments of so many great Americans
Yeah.
and Canadians that have contributed to our economy. And I think tech is just as good a place as any to really recognize why this field needs diversity. And look, everybody knows I say this all the time. Rural areas, especially rural Black areas, did not have access and resources to tech for decades. But the tide is changing. A lot of things are changing. People are understanding that we need diverse voices. We need diverse faces in this field. We have a lot of first generation Americans in our district. We have the children of immigrants. We have people that speak other languages. So it really is a great place for them to find their place because look, we had a guest earlier this year who talked about. She wrote a book about it called Unconscious Bias, and it's about how we're not saying people are racist. We're not saying they're evil, but when only one type of person is programming the AI, when only one type of person is doing the user experience, things are going to be overlooked. So why is it so important for the diversity to grow in this field?
I'm glad you touched on that, Greg, because that is actually a part of user research. There is a term called illicit bias. And illicit bias is basically what you just described, is where it's not saying that you knowingly are this thing, but if you're only programmed to know one thing, to experience one thing, and also think that that thing is greater than any other thing you don't know, that's an illicit bias. And we are very careful as researchers as well to not put our own biases or anything into the research. So just knowing that helps. That goes into where you come in as a consumer, students, is understanding that data is important. It is the new gold. Data is the new gold. If you have information that someone does not have that is going to make their product, their technology, where their technology is going, if you have that information and they do not have it, you are literally holding $1 million. So I say that to say, whenever there's a survey going around, you then become a part of the data set. The word data set is very important, especially as AI comes out. I don't know if any of your students use Pinterest. Um, Pinterest has a UI, which is a user interface, that when you search certain things, like let's just say you search makeup or boys, if you search haircuts or hairstyles, it ends up also having you filter by skin color. You have to filter little black boy, Hispanic boy, or why our hair types are different. And so, in a way, you start to kind of blur the lines of is this offensive or is it not? But as a technologist, it's important to understand that when you're doing research, you have to understand who the users are. What are their differences? What are the demographics? And when it comes to Black History Month, it comes full circle because we have an important part of the data. We are a void in the data. And don't go just because you can make money on TikTok, just because you feel like you're doing something, just because you feel like you have one up. Remember that you still have to be a part of the data.
Absolutely. Well, I do have a couple of questions from the students. This one is Bryson Stevens. He's in ninth grade, and he asked, "What project that you've worked on are you most proud of?"
Oh man, I've done so many. Okay, so I have one that is very important and it's the biggest. It's the one that I will show to recruiters. But one that is more important to me is one that actually was not the best. It didn't come out the best. But the reason that it is because I learned so much on that project. And it was a volunteer project. In this field, you'll hear the word pro bono. It was pro bono means you do it for free, but you're actually doing the work. And the impact that it had on the nonprofit and the owner of the nonprofit, the conversations we had, the voices we heard, really made that project stand out. Would it be something that's viable on my portfolio? Not really, because we ran out of time. It was a 48-hour sprint, which means 2 days we had to come up with the whole life cycle. But understanding again, if you are a UX designer, you have to understand the user. And sometimes that also means stepping out of the cubicle and changing lives. And that's what we did.
Absolutely. This is Zarius Cooper. He's in 12th grade, and he asked, "What do you enjoy most about your career?"
Oh man, it's so fun. It's so fun. So I'll give you two sides of it, right? So uh, being able to design, I'm able to monetize what I love to do and what I got in trouble for doing in school. I used to draw on my paper all the time. I used to doodle. I used to finish my work early. And I used to get in trouble all the time for just being bored. And so now I actually get to monetize doing the things that I used to get in trouble for doing. And I'm doing it for a cause. It's helping someone. It's really fun to see what you design end up on your neighbor's phone, things of that nature. And then the second part, the food is amazing. The events that tech holds is amazing. It's fun. And I'm an introvert and I can still say I have a lot of fun doing this.
That's awesome, and you're really involved in the tech community out there in Dallas, and some of them
Yes.
have been a member of this class, and then I've got to get you connected with some other ones out in Texas as well. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking
Thank
some time
you.
for us. But a couple things before we go, where are some places we can see some of your work to see what all UI designers, UX and UI designers do?
So you can actually go to my LinkedIn. It's Shannon A. Jenkins or just Shannon Jenkins. But my website, my portfolio, you can go to shannonalexandria.com. Shannonalexandria.com. And I advise to go as soon as possible because you are also going to see what it's like to update portfolios as I'm about to here shortly. I'm going to go from dark mode to light mode, and that in itself is just kind of like a learning journey. But shannonalexandria.com is where my portfolio is.
Yeah, and I've got it pulled up now, and you've got several things that you've worked on there. Really interesting stuff. But the last thing before we go, why should these kids really consider a career in UX design, no matter what path they take after high school?
I would say really consider it if you like designing things, if you like making an impact, and if you feel that you have a visual say in the world and you want to see the data change, you want to see the user experience change and how you experience the world, become a UX designer and doors will open to other places as well.
Love it. Well, again, we thank you so much for joining us all the way from Dallas, Texas. Shannon
Yes.
Jenkins, UX designer. Talk to you soon, my friend.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.